This evening, Christmas Eve, we'll have a much longer service telling the story of Jesus' birth. But here I just want to offer a brief meditation on two passages together. One was from Luke and just sort of lays out the events around Jesus' birth. And the other is from John and gives us an interpretation, insight into the meaning of what was happening when Jesus was born. So let's start with Luke. In those days, a decree went out from the Emperor Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration and was taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. All went to their own town to be registered. Joseph also went from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to the city of David called Bethlehem, because he was descended from the house and the family of David. He went to be registered with Mary, to whom he was engaged and who was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for her to deliver the child, and she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in bands of cloth and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. Now that's Luke and the events. Here's John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him, not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify to the light, so that all might believe through him. He himself was not the light, but he came to testify to the light. The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came into being through him, yet the world did not know him. He came to what was his own, and his own people did not accept him. But to all who received him, who believed in his name, he gave power to become children of God, who were born not of blood or of the will of the flesh or of the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh and lived among us. And we have seen his glory, the glory as of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. John testified about him and cried out, "This was he of whom I said, 'He who comes after me ranks ahead of me, because he was before me.'" From his fullness, we have all received grace upon grace. The law, indeed, was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God. It is God, the only Son, who is close to the Father's heart, who has made him known. The shelter of a stable may be better than nothing, but it is still, when you get right down to it, basically only a shed, a roof, maybe walls. It's at least partly out of the weather. It provides at least a little bit of privacy, but it's still not where you want to give birth. Maybe there's a relatively clean spot somewhere, but you can tell from the smell alone what's around you. And forget about building a fire for warmth or for light. With all that hay and all that straw, you wouldn't want anything that could send even a single spark into the air. So just hope for warm weather and for daylight. And the floor? The floor is going to be grimy. And if there's no floorboard there, then you're just going to have to take your choice between dust or mud. Cover it over with straw, and you may control either of those things a little bit, but then you invite bugs and spiders. And if you do manage to get through the hours of labor and you have a baby, placing a newborn in a feed trough isn't all that clean either. Although the manger does have the advantage of being lifted above the ground at least a little bit. Although mosquitoes and gnats could still be a nuisance. It's practical to wrap a newborn up pretty well to keep the bugs off. But when you do swaddle a baby, remember, you're going to have to unwind the cloth pretty often and replace it with clean rags. Someplace nearby, if it's a stable, if it's a place where animals are kept, you're likely to have a water source to wash the rags out, to wrap the child up again. Of course, that might be the same water that the animals have been drinking and lapping at. You're also going to help the mother presumably get cleaned up too, but there are all those moments and all those different ways in which you could be introducing infection. It's a wonder, if not a miracle, that both Mary and Jesus survived his birth. Imagine what Joseph might have been feeling as he watched all of this, helpless to do much but scrounge for shelter and maybe scrounge for food, getting angrier and angrier at himself for even setting out on this trip to Bethlehem, and angrier at the Romans for forcing them all to do it. And in the back of his head, scared for all the things that could still go wrong, things he hadn't even thought of, being afraid to leave them alone, even when he had to provide for their needs, needing rest himself, and then getting confused by the surprise visit from some shepherds and suspicious of anybody else who might show up unannounced. Worried about the people who might find the baby, but not because angels sent them, but because Herod did. This is how the Son of God is born. And it's strange. This is how God's love comes to live among us, endangered from the beginning, vulnerable. Not just as any baby is vulnerable, but vulnerable in an extra special way. vulnerable as, well, as the most vulnerable among us. The Savior does not appear magically and gloriously in blaze of light from heaven with a C major chord played on an invisible harp. There are no choirs of angels around the manger. Those things took place outside of town when the angels did announce his birth to those shepherds and then pointed to that stable over there, over the way in Bethlehem, the one behind the inn, the one easy to overlook, in a town caught up by events that were far beyond the local people's control. This is how the Lord comes to us. The Savior, helpless. The King, poor, endangered, unhoused. The Prince of Peace, soon to be on the run to a foreign land as a refugee from an unscrupulous puppet king manipulated by his own unsteady hold on power. And in years to come, the child born in the midst of the dirt, the grime, he would reach out and touch the unclean leper. The child born in a situation that nobody could handle. He would speak to an out of control wild man. He would look at a storm at sea and he would tell them each, "Peace, be still." And they would. He would stand between a condemned woman and the crowd that wanted to stone her, risking his life yet again. He would spend time with the tax collectors, like the ones who had been in Bethlehem when he was born, forcing everybody to move around from town to town, doing the bidding of the occupier. And to those tax collectors, Zacchaeus, Matthew, he would speak a word that would turn their hearts to God, that would turn their hearts to one another. He himself would be a shepherd to his own people, a good shepherd who lays down his life for the sheep. He would bring God directly and forever into the grimy, muddy, confused, messy middle of things, no matter how dangerous, no matter how difficult, no matter how confusing, no matter how cursed, and bring a blessing and salvation. Of him, it would be said, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ.